I'm going to give a very specific definition of critical thinking. It's the definition of critical thinking I'm going to use throughout all of my discussions of critical thinking and philosophy. And as we go through the series, you will understand why I think that particular definition is important. But I just want to say that when it comes to critical thinking, people have been talking about something called critical thinking. Some others have called it reflective thinking. Other people have called it metacognition. There are a variety of terms that can be used to describe what I'm calling critical thinking. One writer in 2016, who has been well known for his writings on critical thinking over the years, has identified 17 different definitions of critical thinking, 17 different definitions that scholars make use of. There are other people who come up with definitions and who knows what they say about it. But as far as like scholars and actual research, one person identifies 17 different legit definitions. But another person, Hitchcock in the Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy, when he writes on critical thinking, he thinks that all of those definitions are really just attempts to describe careful thinking toward a goal. Careful thinking toward a goal. That's how he sums up all of the different definitions of critical thinking. Careful thinking toward a goal. That's not the one I'm going to use. Mine is a little bit more elaborate, but that would be an easy way for you to understand critical thinking. Careful thinking toward a goal. However, when it comes to actual psychological research on critical thinking, cognitive psychologists, when they are trying to identify what's the mechanism in the brain, in our thought process, which characterizes critical thinking, one of the most common themes you will find is that a critical thinker is able to decouple their prior beliefs and opinions from evidence and arguments. This word, decouple, is important. They're saying that a person who is able to think critically can separate themselves, separate their own ideas about the world, their own beliefs about the world, their own opinions about the world, separate that from the reasoning process that's going on in their own mind and in the minds of others. Separate their own prior beliefs, opinions, and convictions from arguments, evidence, and reasons, evaluating evidence and reasons. So there's an argument that's presented by another person. They're presenting evidence, they're presenting various reasons why they believe what they believe. And then there's a reasoning process that people go through. And a person who thinks critically can separate the two. They can separate their own beliefs, convictions, and opinions from the actual reasoning process. They can decouple those two elements. In actual psychological research, that is something that you're going to hear over and over again. Now, as if I hadn't said enough already, I pointed to two things. Number one, that one person summed up all of the contemporary definitions of critical thinking to just mean careful thinking toward a goal. But when it comes to psychological research, one of the elements that is key among all critical thinkers is their ability to decouple prior beliefs, opinions, and convictions from the reasoning process, evidence, and argumentation. Now I want to give you a really long definition of critical thinking. It's still not the one I'm going to use, but it's a long definition of critical thinking that was developed way back in 1990 when a bunch of psychologists and philosophers got together to try and figure out how they could best describe critical thinking. And here's the definition that they came up with. Critical thinking is a purposeful, self-regulatory judgment which results in interpretation, analysis, evaluation, and inference, as well as explanation of the evidential, conceptual, methodological, criteriological, and contextual considerations upon which that judgment is based. Now, talk about a mouthful. There's a lot going on in that definition, and maybe that is what is needed for a good, solid definition, this really long explanation. You're going to understand more and more what all of that is about as we go along in the series in critical thinking. But the one I'm going to use, I'll bring up here shortly.